Hi everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of ABCFC or the ABCFC podcast, whichever one you want to call it. This is technically the second episode, although it's you can technically count it as the first episode of our Bundesliga and A-League weekday or match day or weekend review series that we're obviously going to be doing each week. And boy, have we got a great week to start off with. Some massive games, der Klassiker in the Bundesliga, along with some other big games there, and some good games, and a decent enough week to start the new A-League season. But before we get into any of that, for any of you who caught our podcast last week, or for those of you who watch or are friends of this channel and know me, you'll know I'm a massive Manchester United fan among any other team, and there's one reason I've got a massive smile on my face right now. And I did say last week, even though it's a primarily Bundesliga and A-League podcast, I am from time to time going to touch on United, and you better believe one of those times is when we turn up to fucking Anfield and defeat those scouse twats. Thank you. I just had to get it out there. What a fucking win this morning that was. I was confident going into it, as I guess weirdly a lot of those United fans are, because we're so shit right now all these days, or we can be so shit. Why not just say we can win any week? But we believed it, and it fucking happened. And best of all, Harry fucking Maguire, get your fucking head on that ball and thump home the winner at Anfield. He missed the chance to do it last year, but it's even fucking better that he's done it this year. Fucking Fridgehead strikes again with another massive goal for this club. He is actually becoming a cult hero, and Burmo scores after less than 2 minutes. Liverpool look at tatters, they're fucking all over the place. Salah looks completely washed at this point. He is not the player he was even last season anymore. Kirkes is an absolute fucking shadow of Andy Robertson at left back. Like, there's just so many issues in that team. They've lost four in a row for the first time since 2014. That is just golden as well. And Amorim gets his first ever back-to-back wins in the Premier League as Manchester United manager, and there couldn't be a better way to finally break that by going to Anfield and beating Liverpool at Anfield. The first time we have done it in 9 years. Wayne Rooney scored the winning goal in a 1-0 win under Louis van Gaal back in January 2015. That was the last time we beat Liverpool at Anfield. And we've actually done it again. And it feels so good. But we've got to continue it now. But I'm not even going to think about the fact that the Brighton team, who just have been living rent free in our heads for the last few years in the Premier League, forget that. We have, right here, right now, Manchester United, the team that everyone's clowning on and memeing and hating and just saying we're shit and overrated and all that crap, have just gone to the home of the Premier League champions, our biggest rivals, and beaten them 2-1. Have that. Sorry about that, Ben. And for
What
those
a
of you
what
listening,
a way to start
West
the.
Brom did.
I was just going to say, what a way to start the pod, yo! Straight out of the gate. Great win to United, and you did mention West Brom, my team battling away in the championship there. Great win on the weekend. So,
Yeah.
still in touch with the top two, thankfully, and in the playoff spots. Long way to go yet, but look, a really good result for the Baggies, and hopefully to continue a couple of lame sort of weeks over the last couple of match days, but still sticking around.
Yeah, as it always is. So, now that I've got that out of the way, let's get on to the actual point of this podcast. Bundesliga and A-League review. We're going to start with the Bundesliga. We got 9 games as usual to go through there, and then we'll move on to the 5 games in the A-League. So it's going to be a fairly long one, of course. 15 games to go through is going to be the case most weeks, obviously. So strap in, everyone, and let's just get going and right into it with the Bundesliga. I just spoke about my team winning a derby in England. Well, perfect place to start in to segue into the Bundesliga is my team in the Bundesliga just won a derby in the Bundesliga. What a great place to start right there. Yeah. Bayern, of course, another solid performance. I think it's 11 wins from 11 from us now in all comps, which is just a ridiculous start to the season. If it was ever in any doubt before that we weren't going to potentially just go and win the league again this season, I think this has almost certainly confirmed it. Dortmund were good, but I think, yeah, Bayern were too good in the end, and I think deserved that 2-1 win in the end. I mean, it was just really a late consolation from Brandt pretty much in the end, who I actually honestly think I'm surprised they didn't start with. I don't know if there was injury concerns around there, but I was always feeling they were just missing that sort of creativity from Julian Brandt, and when he came on, he made a difference, but at that point, it was just really too late. Essentially, Yeah, we were too good. We got off to, the start was too good. Harry Kane once again scoring for fun as he is this season. Just another goal in another important game for Bayern. I mean, he's literally doing it all for us this season. I mean, what were your thoughts on the game, Ben, as a neutral watching the Der Klassiker?
Look, it's having a team in the Bundesliga last season. It's always good to see where the front who the front runners are. That's what you want to aspire to. But look, it's always a massive matchup. You talk about derbies all over the world, and this one's one of the best that I've seen in all my years following world football. And look, Bayern have been a cut above in more recent seasons, but and this matchup didn't disappoint. So certainly, Harry Kane sort of popping up literally everywhere, and knows where the goals are, and certainly was important in the lead up to the first goal. So Olise's goal, and look, he's been a really good signing for them, I think, since coming across.
Oh, he's been unremarkable. Like last season, he was amazing, and he's just continuing it on this season. I mean, he obviously being a United fan and watching a lot of Premier League football. I remember obviously watching him playing for Palace a few times, and we thought he was good then. But the levels he's gone to since joining Bayern is just beyond. Like he's probably never going to win a Ballon d'Or because they seem to just have favours for teams in Spain usually. But I mean, if he has another good season here, Bayern win the league, win the win the Pokal because we actually still in it, remarkably, and potentially do a treble and win the Champions League. There's got to be a conversation had around him or Kane, but that's just a different thing. We're talking about just one game here, obviously. But yeah, he obviously gets a goal himself in this game. Comical is one way to describe it. Maybe a little unfortunate with Dortmund. I think Joe Bellingham just didn't look up to speed with the game when he came on, and that kind of showed it when he was trying to clear the ball before Elise slid in. That, or Elise just had real, or you could also call it Elise just had great instincts as any like top level player like himself should have and would have in those situations. But I mean, yeah, either way, I think the way Bayern set up, the way Dortmund set up as well, just Dortmund way too passive in that first half. I expected them. I thought obviously we would beat them. You've got to be confident as a Bayern fan, like
Absolutely.
always. You've got to expect to win every week. But more so to this game, Dortmund had a decent start to the season and had looked good in the last few weeks. And I thought they maybe would have come with a little more intensity, but just way too passive for me in that first half. I think just didn't really set the tone. It was too easy for us to kind of just get control of the ball, and we were always going to get control of the ball, but we made it too easy. I just don't think they really kind of, Kovac didn't quite get it right. As I said earlier, I think Julian Brandt not starting was a big mistake even. I don't know again if there was injuries behind it, the why he didn't start, but wrong decision from Kovac. Of course, former Bayern manager, of course, as well. Um, yeah, but I just think overall Bayern just had too much for Dortmund. Even when they improved in the second half, they just weren't really creating enough clear cut chances. And the other thing we have to talk about is like Harry Kane in that whole game. Obviously, he scored and everything as well, but like the dropping deep, the long
Yeah.
passes that we all know, he was doing it to another level in that game. Like in the last 5 minutes or so, he was practically playing as a third centre back almost,
Yeah.
just tackling on the edge of the box, clean tackles. Just he is incredible. Like he is just all round of a footballer. I know there's a lot of people saying who's the better striker, Kane, Haaland, Kane. It's Harry Kane, people. Can we not mess around with this? Harry Kane is a world class striker and he's a better footballer all round than Erling Haaland. You give Erling Haaland the ball in the box 9 times out of 10, he's scoring a goal, of course.
Yeah.
But Harry Kane can just drop deep and create chances for other people. Well, I'm not going to get too into this. Like, it's not a Kane Haaland debate podcast. This is the Bundesliga A-League podcast. But
Yeah.
just
Yeah. And just
putting it out
and
there.
I guess Chester, your thoughts on that late consolation goal from Brandt. I mean, I thought the defending with that particular play was not as great as you'd expect from
Yeah, it
Bayern.
was poor. The cross, decent cross, but I just think, Tarn over Meccano are just wide open in the middle of the box. I mean, just completely got between them. They're just too spread there. Yeah, it was an easy finish. Good run, good movement from Brandt. Showed what they were missing when he wasn't playing earlier in the game.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, I just think that just came one bit too late because it's never easy to score against Bayern, let alone score at least twice in like 5, 6 minutes at the end of a game. It's been done before, but it's not like it's always going to happen. Another thing I will point out, I thought Schlotterbeck stood out for Dortmund from a defensive point of view.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons it was a narrow win in the end for us. We had a lot of the ball and we were trying to create chances, but he was covering a lot of times. He was cleaning up. He was so for Dortmund fans out there, I think your captain's performance on the night was a very solid defensive performance, and yeah, just gonna add a little positive spin on for Dortmund. There before we move on to the next game. Any thoughts from you before we move
Look,
on that game? Other thoughts?
certainly, you know, being that sort of fierce rivalry, it was another great addition, I think, and certainly they'll match up again in Dortmund later in the season. So hoping
Yeah,
for another great fixture, but certainly the points that we covered really sort of sum up the game, and Bayern sort of just doing what Bayern do and have done so far for the season.
yeah.
But the next
7 points clear.
Yeah,
Seven
that's
points clear
right. Yeah,
already
so
at
they're
this
just
stage of the season.
in
So
their own
yeah,
sort of little world at the moment, and it's everyone else is sort of trying to catch them. But the next game was Bremen versus Heidenheim. Heidenheim versus Bremen, and I thought Heidenheim, looking at this game in a bit of detail, they did look good. Largely dominating the ball, but just not creating enough clear chances. And a couple of defensive lapses allowed Bremen to score.
yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, I was surprised how well they played. I mean, obviously at home, it always seems like a not tricky place for the bigger teams. No disrespect to them, but a nice closed-in ground. It's like a game. It's a ground you'd want to watch a game of football. I think. And I think they really showed up for their home fans today against a Bremen side that I maybe thought going into it were probably just going to be a little bit better than them, but shows how much I know, right? How difficult football is to predict as well. Yeah, even to go to say, I think they were somewhat lucky to come away from that draw, with a draw in the end. Bremen, very large dominating periods like on the ball from Heidenheim. I just don't think they had the quality enough up front to do much with it. I thought Zivzivadze, or however you say his name, had a good performance up front for them, but just maybe lacking that quality. It's still a positive performance though at this point in the early stages of the season. They are still second from bottom, just above a team that we're going to get onto later in this video. But you know, they made Europe 2 seasons ago. They just missed out. They survived relegation from the playoffs. I think it was last season, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Where they
winning the
managed to stay
promotion
up.
playoff like
Yeah,
by a late goal. And look, certainly from the games that I've seen, and as you said, they're having trouble, with their attack. Look, I think they need, they need the maximum points, obviously, but getting draws against sides like Bremen and the stronger sides is going to be good for them, and especially points at home. As a St. Pauli fan, that was certainly something I took last season. Out of that, you need to really need to have good results at home, and even if you're taking points against the stronger sides, that's still a good result. But they were good on transition Heidenheim in the second half. It had some really good passing interchanges and exchanges out wide. Backhouse was great in goal for Bremen as well. He really
yeah.
made
I
some
thought he had a
key
good
key
performance. Yeah.
first saves to keep it scores in that first half.
Yeah, as I said, like they didn't have the quality up front. Also, I want to point out, as you mentioned, the Bremen keeper Backhouse did have a very good game, and especially in that first half. Otherwise, potentially Heidenheim could have been 1 or 2 nil up going into that break, and it could have been a completely different game. So Bremen have him to thank for it, as well as their defenders. I think throughout the whole game, they didn't have too much of the ball, and they struggled to get control of the ball. But Amos Pieper and Marco Friedel in their defense both stepped up. I think both at least tried to keep it tight at the back. And when you're playing these smaller teams like Heidenheim, when you can get that control at the back, even if you're not playing your best, you're always going to potentially have chances to try and score a goal or two, and that's exactly what happened for Bremen. But yeah, as we said, nothing to take away from Heidenheim's effort. It's still a very well earned draw in the end, and it's a result they should be at least a little bit proud of. It's early stage of the season, it's
That's
nowhere
right.
close to being over for them yet.
Yeah,
I think they just need to keep looking up at this point because you know, they haven't started amazing. It's only one win in seven at the moment, but that's a good point. Their first draw of the campaign, at least. So it's a good point to kind of show maybe they've still got something to give as this season progresses without just completely giving up on it. Speaking of giving up on it, um, we'll move on to our next game where Wolfsburg have been embarrassed by Stuttgart at home. Stuttgart just way too strong for them. Just another awful performance from Wolfsburg, who just continue to slide down the table. I think it's 15th they now find themselves in. They're only a point above Heidenheim, in fact, so it's been a poor start from their standards. We talk about good for Heidenheim to get that point, even though it's not been a great start. Wolfsburg being a different level team, it will be considered a poor start. It's just a directionless performance again. I think Stuttgart just found it way too easy to play through them, to get control on them. Just they looked lost on the pitch. Didn't really have a game plan. Eriksson, I think, believe was making his first start for them. Coming from my club, United, not getting him on the ball enough. Any time he did own the ball, it looked like he was going to try and create things, but just overall not enough on the ball. And it just looked like Wolfsburg had no idea what to do whenever they were trying to move forward up the pitch. Stuttgart just looking way too good, and that midfield just once again controlled and ran brilliantly by Angela Stiller. So just another solid performance from a player who's rapidly becoming one to watch, and one of the best in his position. Right up there with Joshua Kimmich and that sort of level of player. And there is a big move you'd imagine on the horizon soon for him, whether that be to a club in England or Spain, or if that's to be to Bayern, like we like to do when we take young, promising like Germans who are getting a bit older and coming up at the right time. But yeah, I think Stuttgart up to, I believe, is it third? Yeah, they're up to third. They had a difficult season last season. They've looked a lot better again this season because, like 2 seasons ago, of course, they beat us to finish second. So yeah, they've looked. I'm not going to say they're in a title race. I mean, they're 6 points. Well, sorry, not 6 points. They're 6 points behind us right now. So yeah, it's looking good for Stuttgart. It's looking awful for Wolfsburg. What were your thoughts on that one, Ben?
Look, I agree. I thought it was really disappointing from Wolfsburg, and as you said, uh, you know, uh, sort of down in the bottom area there with Heidenheim, as we just talked about. But look, Stuttgart's high energy and their pressing throughout the game was excellent. Often committing 2 to 3 players to press from the Wolfsburg defenders were trying to get the ball forward. And high turnovers, as we know, Chester, leading to goals and chances. That's usually the way with that high press football in any league.
It's true about what you mentioned. I'm just saying about that press. It's not easy for play. It's not. You don't always see it work when teams completely suffocate a defender when they're on the ball or a midfielder on the ball. Because sometimes they can get caught out. But the way Stuttgart did it against Wolfsburg this weekend was just excellent. Just 2, 3 every time a Wolfsburg player, defender or midfielder get on the ball. 2 to 3 Stuttgart players, you said, just converge on them, press them, turn. Especially in the second half, that was really notable. It pretty much led to 2 of their goals. That high press, Stiller's goal came from a high press. Mittelstadt sort of came from a high press. So as you were saying, the press was just excellent from Stuttgart, and Wolfsburg just looked suffocated when they were just trying to play out from the back, especially in that second half.
Yeah, and great to see Mittelstadt on the score sheet as well, and it was a really solid attacking performance, I thought.
Yeah, another great performance from him. Stuttgart do have a very neat team with them. Just kind of like a couple of seasons ago when they had Garassi, who was scoring goals and goals galore for them. They just seemed to they had a bit of a drop off last season. It seems they've built back up. With Stiller getting better and better every season, it seems, or even every week. Mittelstadt still up there. Thiago Tomas, I thought, had another good performance, scoring against his old team, of course. To start the scoring, just all-round solid performance from Stuttgart, and Wolfsburg have serious work to do. That's probably all we can say about that game. Moving on to the next game, which I think you're going to be relatively happy with, being a San Pauli fan. Your close rivals getting beaten, narrowly albeit, but getting beaten by everyone's least favourite club in the league, Leipzig.
Look, credit to Hamburg for the fight they put up. I mean, Leipzig, as you know, they've been up in that sort of Champions League sort of area for the last few seasons, but
they are second now.
Yep, that's second as you mentioned, but certainly, I'll give credit to Hamburg. They've started the season quite well. They're above my mob St. Pauli at the moment, so hopefully that doesn't last for too long. But look, a 2-1 result, but Leipzig holding on for an important win despite as we said, it was a brave performance from Hamburg, and it's the sort of time in the year, just coming off the international break, where teams are still sort of seeking each other out and sort of jostling for sort of, I guess, a really good spot sort of mid-table, and you want to get points away. You want to sort of try and establish points, and where you can. They weren't able to do it on this occasion in Hamburg, but that they weren't to be disgraced, and certainly Dompe was impressive for Hamburg.
Oh
In
yeah, I
that
thought
wide
he looked
position,
very good for them.
linking
Yeah.
up with the forwards. And certainly Baumgartner standing up for Leipzig again with a brace and a really good solid performance. What were your thoughts, Chester?
Yeah, I mean, just as you said, I mean, like, it was a good, brave performance from Hamburg, but they couldn't get it over the line in the end. Leipzig got the win. They've moved up to second in the table at the moment. It's a very kind of close battle going on for that second, which we could see going all season long. You've got them, Dortmund, Stuttgart in the mix. Leverkusen look like they're getting better, who we'll get on to soon. There's going to be a really tough battle for there. I know I'm not including Bayern, and people who aren't Bayern fans are going to hate me here, saying, oh, he's just that confident his team's going to win the league. We're talking about Leipzig Hamburg right now, people, so let's just leave Bayern out of the equation. But yeah, as I agree with you, yeah, Dompe looked impressive for them again. He was really good for them last season despite the Bundesliga, and then he's just looked good again this season in a tougher competition. I thought Albert Sambi Lokonga, he got another goal, of course, like he scored just prior to the international break, I believe. Good midfield control alongside Remberg in their midfield. But yeah, again, just overall Leipzig just managing to, like, good defending, good solid low defending. They didn't really offer Hamburg's forwards too much opportunities throughout the match. And, yeah, Christoph Baumgartner once again stands up for his club, as is so often the case in recent seasons. Very good, talented player, and, they'll be trying to hold on to him. Imagine another player, who could potentially have clubs sniffing around him. Just depends where his loyalty lies, I guess. But yeah, not much more to say about that game. Of course, we've got so much football games to go through, we can't spend 10, 15 minutes going through every single game. But yeah, good win for Leipzig. Unlucky for Hamburg, but they've shown enough in the opening month or so of this season, 2 months I should say of this season, to make me think, maybe they will manage to stay up. But again, it's a long season, and who knows. We'll move on then to, I would say arguably the game of the week. Mainz Leverkusen, 7-goal thriller. Who could thought it? 3-4 or 4-3 winner, so I should say, to Leverkusen that was. As I've put in the notes here, as you've probably seen, Mainz played well, Leverkusen played better, and I think that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah.
I think Mainz putting in a performance we haven't even really seen from them much this season. I mean, down in the bottom three at the moment as things stand. But a performance that will kind of give their fans some promise potentially, because against a Leverkusen side who definitely look to be getting slowly starting to improve after their poor start under Ten Hag, Schulman is definitely starting to get them to be a little better. They did concede 3 goals, fair enough, but attacking wise, I think this was a game just for the attackers. Both teams' defenses weren't at their best this match, but the attack was just full force, full throttle. Grimaldo once again. I mean, have you ever known it in football ever? For not only teams you supported, but in leagues you followed throughout all the years you've been following football, that a team has had their most threatening attacking output as their fullback. But it is just the case. This guy is just having an incredible season in front of goal for them. I think he's up to 4 goals in the league, which is just a ridiculous turn. A ridiculous output for a fullback 7 matches into a season to have 4 goals. He's scored some crazy free kicks already this season. No free kicks there. He got a penalty put away well, and then a solid enough finish that looked like a seasoned striker finished it off, to be honest. He's just a brilliant player, and he's a fullback. Just, it gives new meaning to the word attacking fullback. You think of Trent, Andy Robertson, all these people that people like to say are the best attacking fullbacks, or have been the best attacking fullbacks in world football over the last few years. Can we throw Grimaldo in that list as well?
Yeah,
because
the ultimate swingman for Manchester. That's certainly a term that gets thrown around a lot in different codes. Someone that is primarily a defender but can go forward as well, and certainly Terrier scoring on his long-awaited return from injury. He's been out since January, so that's a great result for him as well. But I thought certainly there were question marks over Flecken, a bit slow playing out at times, and of course that invites pressure, and did invite pressure from Mainz, especially in a few occasions during the second half.
Yeah, I mean the whole Flecken thing. I mean, he's a good keeper. Obviously, they signed him from Brentford this summer. You know, replacing someone like Radetzky, who'd been there for a long time. Obviously, like as I said, they had a poor start under Ten Hag. They're looking to get better under Schulman and are looking better attacking wise. I think defensively they're still showing vulnerabilities, as you said, especially in the second half. I think that press from the Mainz Mount attempting that press Mainz and then just a bit tepid, a bit slow with it to release. Maybe just a lack of a bit of indecision from Flecken. He's still a quality keeper. I just think today wasn't his best day in front of goal. I will also point out Amiri and Pal Nabel, very good performances for Mainz from an attacking um, sense, especially in the second half. Created some very good chances. Of course, Amiri scoring a penalty in that game in the game as well. So yeah, I think good positive signs there for Mainz moving forward. They're a good club, and I think they will start to rise to the table when they get some form and consistency. And to be honest, yeah, despite this close result, I do think I've alluded to it before, but I will touch on it again. Kasper Hjulmand, the manager, former Denmark manager, of course, who did really good things with them in recent years, he's really impressing as Leverkusen's manager. I think, especially from the attacking football side of things, it's looking very good at times, and as I said before when we were talking about the Leipzig game, there could be a very interesting battle for second place going on this season between Leverkusen, Dortmund, Leipzig, and as I said, I'd even throw Stuttgart into that mix. I think Frankfurt have fallen off a bit, but we'll talk about them a bit later. But yeah, any other thoughts on what was probably the game of the week?
I just think, I mean, mine's in the last sort of couple of seasons, I've really sort of followed the top flight, strongly. I think mines have always been that sort of team that, they can beat higher opponents on their day. They can have results like
They've
this.
given us some troubles.
Yeah,
I can tell
exactly.
you they've given us
But
some
they
trouble
always
at
they
times.
always seem to sort of find their way sort of through that mid to sort of higher end of the table. And I mean certainly, I think by April May, I think they'll be sort of in that position to that top half of the table potentially. And look, they've certainly got a good squad, and they'll have these results, but they'll have some really positive ones, I think, as well as time goes on.
Yeah, very much. We'll move on now to the next game. That was Union
So
Berlin
Union,
beating Mönchengladbach,
that's right, yeah.
Gladbach fans 3-1. Why don't you start off this one because yeah, I've got some thoughts on this one for one of the teams in particular.
Yeah, look, a great fixture to kick off the weekend on the Friday night over there in Berlin. Packed house again. It's a really unique atmosphere in the stands. There's a particular pre-match song that they play, which really gets things going. A little bit of Rammstein, I think, as well, which I personally love.
Yeah. Like the Heidenheim Stadium as well. It's another ground that you just think would be a great ground to watch football at,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a really close, tense atmosphere there, and it's difficult
absolutely.
for any team going there. I mean, even we struggle going there, so that tells you how difficult it is going to Union and playing and beating them there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and certainly, Union have made that ground a fortress over the last few seasons, and they did that again on the Friday night. Too strong at home again. Really good at keeping their shape, and they're a very well organised team off the ball.
yeah.
Your thoughts, Chester?
Yeah, just to echo literally what you're saying, yeah, they just, as I said before, they're just, that ground is very intimidating for teams to come and win at, let alone even getting draws at. And they've given us trouble. Like if Bayern are having troubles there, you can imagine other teams will. Just way too strong at home. They're just so difficult to beat there. They're so well organised, such a well drilled, well structured team. Probably if you're thinking about comparing them to like your standard physical Premier League team, they're the ones you can kind of draw the most comparisons with in terms of the Bundesliga, in the way they play, the way they set up. But yeah, enough is it about that and Union winning and moving into the top half of the table as a result. We know to talk about Gladbach, who are having a terrible start to the season that I don't think
Yeah,
anyone really promoted. If you'd see other people making Bundesliga prediction videos earlier on in the season, no one really was putting Gladbach not that close to the bottom, and they're still at the foot of the table. They haven't won in any of their first 7 games. It's just not a good time to be a Gladbach fan, and they seriously look to be in serious trouble, especially if you consider who they're playing next, and that's us. So it doesn't get any easier for them with that being the case. It's just not a good time. They just defensively they look weak. They don't exert much control over games. They're struggling to create chances in attack. weak from set pieces as well as Union exploited at times today. Dookie scoring twice. Yes, people who don't know the Bundesliga, that is name, but it is spelled Dukhi before you get the giggles. Um, but yeah, 2 goals from him, showing that presence in the box against a very weak Mönchengladbach side. Looking low on confidence at the moment. And potentially Polanski as well as their manager. A heavy defeat to us. Could it be the end, or will they show some faith in him, knowing that history says as a bigger club they might eventually get it together, but you just never know with football. Really, that's the whole mystery and the beauty of the game, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I guess just a final thought from me before we move on to the next game. Look, really, as you said, a lot of pundits wouldn't have and predictors wouldn't have predicted them to be bottom of the table, going into the eighth match day, and it's certainly the case where you really sort of need to start picking up points, to really sort of look at yourself as a sort of a mid to lower 10 table. As a St. Pauli fan, you don't want to be stuck in that end of the table for too long, especially sort of after the winter break when the whips really start, cracking.
Yeah. And they've got us next, so it just really doesn't get easier, does it? Like,
not at all.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll move on now because as I said we've got a lot of games to go through. Still a few more Bundesliga games and then 5 A-League games. Pretty non-eventful one. This one next. Köln won. Augsburg won. Augsburg have had a middling or even somewhat struggling start to the season under Sandro Wagner, former Bayern striker, of course. I think Köln have had a good start to the season, but I think this game just really played out in a very kind of uneventful fashion. Not much to say from the first half. Augsburg really failed to hold on in the end in a tight game. They got the breakthrough through that penalty. Rieder scored the penalty. Solid performance from Köln all round. They got themselves back into the game. Brilliant finish it was to get themselves back in. Difficult for Augsburg really at this point in time. They're struggling to win games. Long season could potentially be on the cards for them if they don't start finding some consistency. I don't think they're in any inherent danger of going down, I'd say, at this point in time. But, they would potentially be nervously looking over their shoulder if another month goes by and the similar kind of form continues for them. Köln, on the other hand, and I will just touch on Köln, up from the Zweite Bundesliga, obviously from last season, back in the Bundesliga, 6th place that point takes them to. I think 11 points on currently. There is a bit of a gap between them and 5th place Leverkusen, but, they are currently there or thereabouts, so, even though they've just got promoted, it doesn't mean they can't have a fair crack at it like Heidenheim did a few seasons back.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Certainly just echoing on that, look at that. It's been a really good result for Cologne to come back. It's difficult to get promoted from the Zweite Bundesliga, but they've done it really well, and especially sitting in the European spots, but also just a thought from me on Augsburg. They're another one of those sort of teams that eventually sort of find their way into that mid-table position. So it's just a case of them finding their feet. But look, real credit to Köln. Certainly a point away from home as well, and you want to get those points away from your
own home. They were at home. Yeah, they were at home, Köln were. Right. Just saying, Köln were the home team.
Oh, well, there we go. Yeah. Right, yeah. My apologies, but certainly, well, it sort of ties into that. You want to get points away from home, but you also want to make that ground a fortress as well and pick up points where you can, especially for a team like them who've been promoted as well. You want to get points wherever you can find them. So moving on to the next game, which I thought was another really great fixture. So definitely Freiburg there against Frankfurt. I thought it was a really great game as a neutral to watch, but Freiburg not wasting any time. They scored after 2 minutes, and a great run and finish down the left from Sherhan. I hope that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, I think that was his first start for them as well, so good to get a goal on starting debut or something.
Yeah, but a great way to start after a couple of minutes to be 1-0 up. Jonathan Burkhardt scoring twice in 10 minutes as well to give Frankfurt back the advantage. It was a great recovery after the early strike going behind.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, yeah, as you said, good start for Freiburg, and I think Frankfurt started to get their act together a bit after that bit of a sloppy defensive start, poor defending. I think it's Robin Koch gave the ball away in a really bad position to give it away, and they managed to capitalise. But yeah, Jonathan Burkhardt, a very underrated striker. He's getting a bit older now. I mean, remember his days when he was at like Mainz and they had that whole partnership thing going between him and Karim
Yeah.
Onisivo. They called it Johnny Sivo. He's obviously moved to Frankfurt now and he started the season well. Had another good performance in this. And I mean, how long is it with Germany and their striker issues till they look to him as a solid permanent option potentially up front in their international games? Not related to the Bundesliga, of course, but just putting it out there, Germany. Um,
So that was in like the first half hour, but there was a little bit of drama towards the end.
Yeah, of course there was. Yeah, late goal from Freiburg's cult hero Vincenzo Grifo. His 97th goal for Freiburg. Apparently that was very cheeky little free kick. I have to say, just to quickly. I mean, I love it when players just go like, "Wait, you ready? Look at the referee. You ready? I'm just gonna take it." Gives the keeper no chance. Good goal to level it up. Bit of drama at the end there, as we always like to see in football. And overall, I think Freiburg will be happier with the point. Frankfurt, you just look, I said how people wouldn't have predicted Gladbach to go down. I think I was alongside a lot of other people who thought Frankfurt were going to have a very good season, and they did start the season well, and it's just seemed to have gone a bit pear-shaped in recent weeks for them, which is something they'll be looking to fix as quickly as possible. But yeah, from the start of the season when they were looking like they were nailed on for top four, now they're down in seventh. They've slipped 4 points outside the top four now. They've had a poor run of form in that amongst obviously playing us. But, not a great start to this game, not a great finish to this game. Good in the middle, but either side of that, started poorly, finished poorly for them. So yeah, I think they'll be looking to try and hopefully fix those issues soon because after a good start in the league, they don't want to let that just be like just a flash in the pan sort of thing or moment in the sun and start to tumble back down in the battle for the European places rather than the top four. So yeah,
So we get to the final game of the weekend, and there's probably not a whole lot that I'm going to talk about on this one, but it was St. Pauli coming up against Hoffenheim, which is usually a really good matchup. It was last season. The Millantor was packed out again, as is standard for a cult club like St. Pauli back in the Bundesliga, but it was a 3-0 win to Hoffenheim, which I was quite surprised with, but certainly just sort of going through the game and the notes that I took, it was a slightly altered lineup. Martin Kars was actually preferred to Andreas Otonji, who's actually their top scorer this year. He was on the bench along with the return of Jackson Irvine, the Socceroos captain, who's back from injury. He's missed the early part of the season. Hasn't featured yet. Eric Smith's done a really good job as captain, and it's good to see him back on the bench. Connor Metcalf was also on the bench, came on late as well. But St. Pauli almost conceded on 7 minutes. There was an offside that was waved away, but uh, Vasil was kept busy in the first half, and I think Hoffenheim, looking at last season, their defence was a little bit looser, uh, but somehow, the score was 0-0 at half time, and I think from a St. Pauli point of view, that was a really good result. But the second half, not so great.
yeah, not so great at all. That's what. Yeah, I said when we were just before we began recording that I thought your notes had been a bit too kind on your team, and I'm going to stand by that. 0-0 at halftime is a good result, especially considering they'd been dominating from the beginning to the end of the game. But I do think you could have even been 1-0 up at half time. Cars had a gilt edged chance that he missed, and I think he would, you should be expecting any striker in a Bundesliga level to be putting chances like that away. Even though Pereira Lage as well forced a good save from Baumann on, later on in the half as well. But yeah, I think you're being too kind on your team there, if I'm honest. 0-0, decent enough, but that second half was a capitulation like I don't think I've ever seen from your team, especially how well you were known to be defensively. Whilst you weren't scoring many goals last season, defensively you were one of the best teams in the league last season. And I think this is one of the few times I've seen you, or very rare occasions, I've seen you guys get completely picked apart in ways that just look really uncharacteristic for that
Mm,
typical kind of really, stacked, tight, well organized,
yeah,
blessing
yep,
defensive performances that you usually put in. And, that second half, Hoffenheim just ran away with it. The first goal, poor defending. The second goal, Kramaric adds you to the list of teams that he scored against in the Bundesliga now, but again, just no one picking him up on the edge of the box, poor defending. And the third goal, I know you were pushing to get, any sort of late consolation, but still just wide open between the two
mm,
centre backs, getting that third goal. I think it's Prommel, wasn't it? Finishing it like a season striker, essentially. Yeah,
yeah. That
like, yeah, I've got to be much harsher on your team. I think even though we're not expecting you to win, you've made a good start to the season. You slipped up in recent weeks, and I think this is another result showing that there's still a long way to go for the team, and that a relegation battle could once again be on your hands this season
yeah.
because
Look, it
it
could
wasn't convincing.
no, and look, it could possibly be, and certainly that third goal sticks in my mind. The defense was just split wide open. It was just far too easy for Hoffenheim to score there. But it did remind me of a few games last season where we were just far too easy to score against. And certainly, as we've both talked about previously, like our defense last season was quite good. One of the better defensive teams last season, but it was really just quite disappointing, especially coming back from the international break and being back at home, and you know, not being able to score too often last season, but being really strong defensively and just not having either of those. This morning was really disappointing, and look, hopefully we can bounce back in the next few weeks and start picking up some points because it's at that time where we need to, and if we don't, the teams below us and Hamburg are a great example. They've been able to pick up points and they're currently ahead of us at the moment, which from a really fierce sort of St. Pauli fan point of view is really disappointing. You want to be ahead of your direct rivals all season long, and that's just not the case. But I mean, overall, in terms of the round, it was a great match
One
today.
thing I want to quickly ask
Yeah.
just on that as well, because obviously you started well, but you're starting to middle out a bit more and slip back towards
Mm,
the places you don't want to be. You're 14th at the moment.
exactly. Yeah.
You're 2 points clear of a poor Wolfsburg, but you are 3 points clear of a Mainz side who look to potentially be getting their act together. Heidenheim had a good performance as well, who were also on 4 points. Maybe less said about Gladbach the better, but um, at what point, you've scored 8 goals in 7 games, you've conceded 12, you conceded 12, so defensively, again, you maybe not as good so far this season as you were last season, and offensively, just over a goal a game at the moment. It's better than probably what it was at times last season, but at what point does safety become the more apparent thing, or progression, I should say,
Yeah.
become the more apparent thing?
Absolutely.
You had a good season last season, but at what point for you as a fan do you start to kind of lose patience with Blessing? Good defensive performances at times from him, but you're just not scoring enough goals on average under him.
Yeah.
At what point does it get to you as a fan who's saying maybe the only way to progress now is to look for a better manager, or a manager who's going to get more out of us in
Yeah.
an
I
attacking
think if
sense?
the I think if those results continue, that's definitely going to be a conversation. But um, it's like you were saying with Mainz and Heidenheim. Eventually things will click with them, and I just hope that happens for us. And that's sort of going into the game this morning. That's what I was hoping for us. Like, hey, we've had some poor results. This is where we need to bounce back, and it was really disappointing. From a fan point of view, just really not St. Pauli I've come to expect from the opening sort of games this year, where
You
we've
got
been really,
Frankfurt
really
next.
able to score and in games for long periods of time. And that's what makes that first half sort of really disappointing for the second. We just weren't in it at all.
So you got Frankfurt next week away.
Mm,
Frankfurt, a team obviously who themselves need to recline some form.
yeah,
So it could be another big game for both clubs, especially you guys. In amongst that mix, trying to pull yourselves clear of that relegation battle before it becomes apparent and
correct. Yeah,
obvious that you're
exactly.
entrenched within it. So yeah,
Yeah, you don't want to be in there come January when the winter break's done and everyone's sort of
yeah,
looking for survival, or same with the European spots as well. You don't want to sort of be in that fight.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, as you were saying, overall a very interesting round of Bundesliga action returning after the international break. Bayern with a massive win in the Der Klassiker, a 7 goal thriller, probably my pick for game of the week between Mainz and Leverkusen. Union with another damaging defeat for Gladbach over at Union. Stuttgart with with another big win. Wolfsburg looked disappointing again, and then obviously your lot, St. Pauli, a very disappointing, uncharacteristically poor defensive performance to sum that up. But yeah, moving on because we've still got 5 more games to cover this episode. Of
I
course,
think
as
it.
is the case every
Sorry,
Monday.
Chester. I think it's actually 6 that we're covering. Is that correct?
Yeah, 6. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, Western United's non-participation this season's caused a little bit of confusion with
Yeah.
we're used to having buys and so forth, but it's 6 clear games. So we're going to kick it off with the opening game of the new season. That was Adelaide United with a 2-1 win over your boys Chester Sydney FC.
Yeah. Yeah, on the Friday night. Good game to kick us off. I thought it had a lot of grit in it, a lot of I think Adelaide just too good for us on the night, and I was kind of, worried about that. I watched our cup run pre-season. I thought we did all right. We did play 2 A-League teams, did get knocked out by one of them. I think the younger team that we have that's going to be playing majority of this season, you'd think, or all of the season, you'd think, is going to be up against some tough tests, and I think away in Adelaide proved to be one of them. They've got some good young players themselves, as do a lot of these teams in the A-League, with the way it's kind of going in the direction it's taking these days. Yeah, it's only because it's only the first game of the season. I'm not exactly going to sit here and be like, "Oh, woe is me, Sydney are doomed." There's a poor performance. I wouldn't say it was a poor performance. I think we played well. It just showed that we don't have the quality that we used to in attack anymore. Good goal consolation from Joe Lolly, maybe questionable keeping, but overall, I think Adelaide just too good on the night. I will say, awful defending for the first goal, just leaving Kitto completely unmarked in the box like that to score the header, and poor goalkeeping from Devon Ishmeers for Alagic's second. But yeah, I mean overall Sydney played well, but I think might be the case in a lot of games for us this season. We play well overall, but don't necessarily put the chances away that we create because we don't have all that quality up front. We're missing Caceres and Klimalo, it's obvious. Campuzano, I know it's only a 1 game sample, but I'm a little worried. He looks a bit clunky, looks a bit slow. Had a few chances, didn't look like he was getting into the game. Hopefully that's just kind of maybe a fitness or having time to adjust to the league thing, and hopefully as time goes on he will improve. And one final note on my team's performance. Paul Okonenklo in midfield did look good again. He impressed me in the cup run, he's impressed me again, so I think he's one player who could be, could have a decent season for us. But yeah, overall, I just think Adelaide just had more quality, and ultimately, that's as basic as that sounds. That's why they got the job done and won this game in the end. But
and I think
your thoughts on it as a neutral?
I think Goodwin making an immediate impact on his return to Adelaide as well can't be understated. Certainly, he's been a fantastic player for them over a number of seasons, and it's almost like he never left the place. Just came back in and was really strong. And I think he's going to help those young players who could be a key for their season as well, and great performances from Dukali and Ethan Alagic as well.
Yeah, and that's really just sums it up. Yeah, wasn't an amazing game, good grit in it. Wasn't the most quality on show. Standard, really, what you expect from the A-League first. It usually takes players a couple of weeks to bed in. But moving on, there was another game on Friday night, which is a rarity. They were really trying to get the football down our throats immediately, weren't they? Brisbane beat Macarthur 1-0 at Suncorp. First game for Michael Valkanis as the new Brisbane Roar head coach, who probably couldn't got off to a better start. I know it was only 1-0. J.O. Shea with the penalty. Macarthur, who I thought were going to finish second, not proving to make the perfect start. They looked very toothless, I have to say. I thought Caceres would have offered more. I thought Bratton had a poor game. Very, very poor defending for the penalty, to just kind of hang your arm out like that, like he did, to give away the penalty. Player of his calibre should really know better in his experience, but there you are. And Brisbane held on against a Macarthur side that really didn't put them under too much pressure thereafter, and even after Brisbane went down to 10 men in the second half as well.
Yeah, I think certainly there were opportunities for Macarthur to really equalise late in the game, especially with the extra man in the last half an hour, but just couldn't do it. And one of the reasons for that was actually Dean Buzanis, who is a name we haven't heard in the A-League for quite a while. He was at
one of your former players.
But look, really made some important saves, and especially in those last 15 minutes when the game was still on the line. The one thing I will certainly say from a Brisbane point of view is the crowd was small but vocal. Certainly, they've had their struggles over the last couple of seasons, but it's really good to see the fans turn out in what was a great start for Brisbane under Michael Valkanis, as you mentioned. But look, quite simply from a MacArthur point of view, they just didn't create enough chances in attack, especially with that extra man advantage for the last half hour, um, which I think was a really disappointing factor from their point of view moving into next week. But more credit to Brisbane, I think. O'Shea with that penalty, but also really keeping the defence at bay, especially with 10 men, was really good result for them in front of their home crowd.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the Saturday games, which began with your lot over in Parramatta, where you drew 1-1 with Western Sydney.
Yeah, yeah,
What I really hated at first was when Barbarousse scored for them. But then I really liked how then Caputo equalised moments later, and then nothing else really happened with the scoring after
yeah.
that. But 1-1 it finished. You were once again largely dominant in possession, but I think you even have to admit you weren't great in the
No,
attacking third.
no.
Good on the ball, but I think just like last season, you struggled to score goals last season, and you didn't look too convincing apart from the goal that you scored today. So it could be a similar season like that. But such is the case of this development league, and the fact that you've got more money than any other club in the league means I still think you're going to be right up there again this season. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Look, I certainly thought it was like you mentioned. Barbarossa scores early, but for Caputo to equalise not long after was really good for the young group. Certainly, they didn't drop their heads after falling behind, and that's a really, I think that's a sign of a really strong group. Takeshi, the Japanese midfielder, coming in and showing some real promise, was a bonus for City as well. Um, largely dominant in possession, but just poor in the attacking third, and that'll hopefully improve with games to come. They've got Glory at home coming up next weekend, which will be good for them. Another good defensive performance from Kai Truan as well.
yeah,
And really Wanderers were poor on the ball and in transition. That hit and hope football from Stajic.
yeah. The way I coin it, yeah, Stajic hitting hope football. I'm sorry, Wanderers fans, don't take this just from me because I'm a Sydney fan and I'm having a dig at your team, but also just be honest. Do you really like the football you play at times? Because it is just atrocious to watch. I say from a neutral point of view, obviously I support your rivals, but it's still just if you're looking at tactics and you're looking and assessing how teams play and performances when you're going to talk about them, it's just he did it at Mariners and he did it with last season with you, and I saw it again in this game. It's just so bad. It's just I can't even describe it as like as a tactic because you honestly can't describe a tactic of midfielders get the ball and just whack it forward and hope an attacker will run onto it, like or attackers get the ball in and around the box and if you see a chance just go for the shot and see if it'll hope it'll see or if it'll go in. Like, I just can't call that tactics. I would hate it if he ever became Sydney's manager, not least because he's
Yeah.
managed
Do you
Wanderers,
think
but
it's
also
do you,
it's just the tactics.
yeah?
Just
I,
bleh.
I was just going to get your thoughts on that. Do you think it's more MacArthur sort of trying to stifle the opponent rather than scoring
McCarthy.
themselves? Well, my Wanderers. My apologies.
Yeah. No, I don't think. I mean, like, you get decent defensive performances, and I can't argue with it. This is why I call it hit and hope, because they scored 53 goals, I think it was, in the league last season, playing largely like that. And he scored a few goals at times when he was managers Mariners, the team scored. Because at times it works, and that's when it gets frustrating. Like I've seen in many a derby or many a game against Mariners when he was in charge there. It works frustratingly. And that's the thing. It's like, that's what makes it so frustrating when you watch your team play against it, and then it's just like half the time it looks atrocious, but then other times it looks wonderful or like amazing, and it's simply because they just did something and it came off for them. It wasn't like it was planned. It wasn't like it was, it literally does look like they'll just, you even see it. You look, they'll get the ball, they'll ping it into the box. Literally half the time it looks like all they're trying to do is just put it in there and see who can get on the end of it. And then every now and then like it will go in there, and some player will take it on the chest and bicycle kick, and it'll fly into the top corner, completely unplanned. Or it'll just ping around and go off a couple of bodies, and they'll get a tap in on it. Got like that's what I'm talking about. But so yeah, I'm gonna say it a lot of times this season, of course, because I have an issue with his tactics, a big issue. But yeah, we'll leave that for now because it will come more times this season. And we'll move on to the next game, which I had the pleasure of sitting down as a Sydney fan and watching Melbourne Victory play out an absolutely atrocious goalless draw against Auckland. Um, good that they didn't win. Also bad that Auckland didn't win themselves. They really just cancelled each other out in the end, both sides. I will get for Auckland's sake, Hiroki Sakai and Francis De Vries are possibly the best fullbacks in the league, and they were that good last season, and they looked amazing again this season. For Auckland's sake, I will say that new English striker that they signed from Barnsley, I think it was, Sam Cosgrove, or maybe he played for Barnsley before. Anyway, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, people. He looks physical, very physical, but he looks a bit slow, and he had a terrible first touch in that game. Again, like the Campazano stuff with us, maybe that's just a sign of him he might need a few weeks to acclimatise to the conditions of the league, playing football in this country and stuff. I thought Jesse Randall had good bursts of energy, a couple of good shots, maybe could have been better though. And more Melbourne City notes as loyalty does not exist in this league. Dennis Jonro returned to the A-League, of course, used to play for you guys. Now an Australian international, of course. Good performance creatively to give Victory some credit, to be non-biased here. I just think overall they were just missing in that final third. Not a great performance from Virgos. Yeah, not much more I can really say about that game I had to sit
Yeah,
through.
I certainly look Auckland probably, you know, with the stronger of the two. And I'm not saying that as a City fan, but I think if we talked about all of the players that have played for obviously both City and Victory, we'd be here for another hour. But that might be for another another crossover
Exactly.
episode. But look, certainly not the way that Victory would have wanted to start in front of their passionate home fans, and Auckland getting a point on the road. It's probably a good start for them, and they've got their first home game on Saturday, so they'll be looking to consolidate that. But so the last game of the triple header on Saturday was the distance derby over at HBF Park in Perth, and it was
And the best game with the triple header.
yeah.
I watched most of your game, wasn't particularly amazing. The Victory game was terrible. And at 9:45, I was like, oh my god, am I really going to have to sit through this? Of course I'm going to have to in this content, because you were watching the Phoenix, which we'll touch on at the end of this. The other Phoenix, the footballing side, Wellington Phoenix, played out a very interesting 2-2 draw in a distance derby, which I thought, for once, lived up to its name as a derby. It was aggressive. It was, Perth got off to a flying start. Wellington with a new system or a new look tactic from Giancarlo Italiano, trying to play with a much higher aggressive line, completely at sixes and sevens early on. Perth got two, could have had three. One was ruled out for offside. As a Sydney fan, I can tell you it definitely annoys me to see Kucharski scoring and playing well for another team, whilst we've still got Pat Wood at our squad. Great job in the transfer market again there to our board. Have to congratulate you. Um, but no, they definitely looked like they were all over the place with that new idea and the new system in the first half an hour, and then I think normal service resumed. Perth found their feet again as a team that struggled last season. Wellington got much more control of the game, a well-deserved comeback. Excellent finish from Eze, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. That little take on the chest, turn the defender, bring the keeper out, dink it over him on a slight angle. Just brilliant. Proper strikers finish that.
Yeah, and I thought
And
I was just going to say
great finish from Armiento
yeah.
as well for the second.
Yeah, I was just going to say I did enjoy Kucharski's finish as well. Just a very solid strike, especially early in the game. But tag it to double it so early on after I think 25 minutes was terrific for the Glory.
They have a good little front three going there. I will say that. Perth. I was impressed, and maybe they can continue it going this season. Who knows? That Kucharski, Taggart, and Despotovsky front three. I believe that's Bobby Despotovsky's son as well.
It is correct. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great name in the old NSL. But I think from a Wellington point of view, just to be 2-0 down but pull it back to 2-2, that's got to give you some confidence early in the season for the Phoenix. Especially when it's never never an easy game going over to Perth. Especially the first game of the year, you don't know what it's going to bring. But I think a 2-2 draw. Would both of those sides be happy with that result? Not too sure, but I guess we'll see in the coming weeks sort of how both of those teams track. Perth have got the champions in Melbourne on Saturday, so that's going to be a really big task for them.
Yeah.
But the last game of the round was a cracker for mine. It was the the F3 derby in Gosford, so Central Coast beating.
See, no more. I watched 3 games of football pretty much from start to finish in the A-League on Saturday,
Mm,
and only got one good one, and that was the distance derby.
mm.
You did one full game of football on the Sunday, and I sat this one out because I'd done so much football in Bayern game, and I'd done all this, but like we had to be fair with who the workload and stuff. And you got the best game of the
Yeah,
round,
oh, it was a cracker. But so
unequivocally the best game of the
I, I,
round.
I couldn't agree more. Look, it was a packed house in Gosford, and so much so that the Jets fans were actually sent upstairs up to the second level of one of the grandstands that actually oversold their away bay allocation, which I think was great from a Jets point of view. Look, especially picking up from their Australia Cup triumph as well. They scored early, scoring within the first 10 minutes, so continuing on that great form can only be a good thing for that club, and they've had some lean years in recent times. So it's great for them and their fans. The Mariners weren't to be outdone though. Look, they scored twice in 5 minutes to lead with some impressive attacking, and that's what you want kicking off a campaign in front of your home fans as well. You do want to start the season well at home, especially against your traditional rivals as well. One thing I will mention is Andrew Redmayne actually came back to the Mariners after a long time away, coming over from Sydney FC, um, and was really solid in goal. He stepped up with a clutch save. He does what he does best. Stopping penalties at really crucial moments. So, but the game took a really big twist in the dying seconds. So there was chaos in the Mariners box. There was a scrambled tap in to give the home side an opening win, which I just thought was exactly what you want, to finish to bookend a really good opening start from Newcastle, but the home side just really had the nous to sort of take that opportunity, and a missed penalty from the Jets late didn't do them any favours either. So. A really good result from the Mariners to pinch it late.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just to go off the highlights that I saw of this game. I mean, yeah, I mean, great start for the Jets off the back of that cup win. Mariners with a new manager, of course, after Mark Jackson left the club recently. Fell one down at home early. Good start for the Jets, and then all I can define is just two defensive capitulation, put Mariners 2-1 in front. You start well, you just want a cup, and the last thing you want to do is give away a penalty, and then concede possession, trying to play out from the back in the manner that they did. Go 2-1 down. Yeah, they pull it back to 2-2, but then miss a penalty. The Wiggle himself coming back up trumps to save penalties like he does best. And then just like the two defensive mistakes that put Mariners in front earlier in the match at 2-2, last kick of the game, probably the worst defensive mistake of the match for Newcastle,
Yeah,
which I can only
it was
describe as
awful.
free defense. Newcastle undid themselves in this derby pretty much. 3 defensive mistakes, 3 Mariners goals, and to concede like that at the end is just it's not great from Newcastle's perspective. The only thing is, first game of the season, it's not the worst. Obviously, it's not like this is happening at the back end or business end of the season when there's stuff to play for. And all I can say is good win for Mariners. Newcastle really can only look back on it and think, yeah, we did this to ourselves.
Yeah, could be the
But
easiest.
it gave a great game that I didn't watch because my games were the Saturday ones. So hopefully next week you can get some snooze fest like I had to go through with 2
Yeah.
of those
Well, I
games.
think I think I
Um,
think scoring Nicholas Duarte, that could be the easiest goal he'll score potentially. It was a really calamitous defensive mix up in the box there, in the 98th minute where you don't expect too much to happen. But look, in this competition, you can never discount some late drama, right? We know that for a
yeah,
fact, and look, a really good home win for the Mariners, and we'll see next weekend if they can continue that form on.
yeah, and they're at Sydney next weekend, so Redmayne's coming back to his old stomping ground immediately.
Mm.
Pretty much. So yeah, it should be a big game there. Hopefully we can put a better attacking performance in than we did against Adelaide, but who knows? Such is the A-League and its mystery of being completely unpredictable. So yeah, that basically wraps up all 15 games across the Bundesliga and A-League that we're bringing to you as a review over this first week. We're going to have to do it all again next week, so that's going to be fun. But that's why we're doing it. We love football and we want to bring it to you guys so we can talk about it. And if United beat Brighton and make it 3 wins on the bounce, I'll probably mention that as well. Just before we go, I think I mentioned it earlier, just other sporting things. You were at the South Melbourne Phoenix game on Saturday. How'd that go for you guys? We're not a basketball channel,
record
but just
margin,
give us an idea.
40 point win for the home side against last year's champs Illawarra, who did beat the Phoenix in the semi-final last season quite convincingly.
Good revenge then.
Sorry, I just missed that.
Good revenge for you.
Oh,
then.
absolutely, yeah, most definitely. Certainly, Nathan Sobey, who's a journeyman of the competition, playing his 300th game. So, one thing, Chester, you'll appreciate that I'll just mention the club.
Yeah.
The club had there's a zone.
Don't tell me you had a pitch invasion.
No, not quite. But the take of the evening off the court for me was that the club had actually organised a number of family and friends for Sobey to come and watch him play. The only problem was they were in a section where the green zone tickets that I have as part me and my mates have as part of our reserved area, that actually double booked them. So we had their friends, Sobey's friends and family, actually trying to take the same seats that we had reserved for the season, which was hilarious. You wouldn't read about it, so.
I mean, it's in Australia. It doesn't surprise me too much, but it's still hilarious.
I wasn't too surprised either, but the fact that having to show our own tickets saying, "Hey, these are the seats we've got reserved for the entire season," was quite comical. So, but look,
what was the outcome in the end of that whole?
I think a couple of people sort of had to get moved, but it was all handled really well, and the it was a great night for the club, and a 40-point winning margin was just not what I was expecting at all. We'd played Melbourne United, who were the front runner a couple of weeks ago, and were outshone. We were beaten by Adelaide on the Thursday reasonably well. Bryce Cotton, who's a name that NBL fans will know quite well, moved from Perth to Adelaide and scored 53 points on Saturday against Cairns in the game before ours. So there's certainly some teams that are going to really be up the top echelon of the comp, and I'm hoping that the Phoenix are going to be one of those. But it was a nice comeback from a Thursday loss to win by 40 points against a club that in Illawarra that are destined to be right up there. But it was really disappointing for them. But great for my mob, obviously.
Just quickly, because I got a friend from New Zealand called Tom who might watch this podcast. I sent him the group I'm in, one of the Facebook groups I'm in. I sent him that, and maybe he's watched it. Maybe he watched this one. He's a Breakers fan. How are they doing this season?
Not too bad. They've certainly the Phoenix did beat them a couple of weeks ago. I think it might have been the weekend before last. They do have gaps, like sort of gaps for the FIBA international breaks as well. So I'm just looking at the so they're actually not doing great at the moment. So the Hawks are actually bottom with a 1-4 record, and the Breakers are 2-6. So not ideal, but
if you watch this, Tom, and you watch this far, which hopefully you do, we're just putting some content in for you as well. I mean, I spoke about Wellington Phoenix as well, and I'll talk about Newcastle. Brighton beat Newcastle in the Premier League. But yeah, we just put some Breakers content in there as well. We're not going to keep going on about this because we are Bundesliga and A-League oriented podcast, and we're here talking about the NBL.
To the pod, I mean,
and we're here talking about the NBL. Yeah. I mean, should we talk about the PGA Tour next?
As Chester knows, I do follow quite a few different teams, and there's certainly got to get a little bit.
But it's going to be very difficult. The episodes might be like 4 hours long in like March, April next year, because he's probably going to be banging on about the Saints for like 40 minutes if they win a game or something.
Well, hopefully, Chester, they're unbeaten by April. Who knows? So.
Yeah.
Look, it was a great weekend of Bundesliga action and A-League action with the opening week. Some really good results and some cracking games. What have we got planned for later in the week, Chester?
So we're back at you on Thursday, you lovely people. I know it was Wednesday last week, but we already explained that was just because we wanted to get something out early. We're now on our regular schedule, Monday, Thursday episodes. So we'll be back on Thursday from now on. Thursday, sorry, this week. Um, and we did the list for Ben last week. Without revealing too much, we're basically going to do a list of mine this week. Not games I've been to physically, because I think I mentioned in last week's episode that you can count those on one hand or two hands at least. So there's no point doing that because they basically pick themselves. The list does. But it's basically going to be a list of basically the best. I mean, you did five. I might squeeze out 10 just because I've got so many I could pick from. The best 10 United games I've watched on TV as a United fan to get you some proper Manchester United content in there. In fact, no, I might do the best 10 games in general I've watched because we did a whole mix for you. I'll put some of my cricket stuff in there. As you well know, there's going to be a certain World Cup final that's definitely going to make the list and probably going to be quite high up, and it's going to piss off a lot of New Zealand cricket fans. But I won't say any more about that. I think Ben already knows what game I'm alluding to.
I think given the fact that we've just talked about the New Zealand NBL team not doing so well, I mean, how much more sort of pain from a sporting perspective can they take? But look, that's going to be fantastic. I'm actually really looking forward to just to
Yeah,
hearing to what you've got there in that list.
yeah, exactly. There'll be a buying game in there as well. Trust me, there will be at least one. Because a lot of buying games are good, but there is one in particular that stands out for me. But I'm not going to say any more before I give away the list. So yeah, we'll be back with you lovely people on Thursday for that one. I hope you've enjoyed our first ever A-League and Bundesliga match day review. Obviously, there's another one coming next Monday, as there will every single week during the winter break. Obviously, there won't be any Bundesliga stuff, but that's a bridge we'll cross when we come to it, obviously. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode today. It was great fun recording this one, just as much as it was the first one. We've been talking for just over an hour, so I think we've done a little better than I thought, covering 15 games. So yeah, it's a good benchmark to start
Yeah,
with,
great,
don't you think?
great work.
Yeah. So yeah, but we'll leave you guys at now. Hope you've enjoyed this first episode, and catch us again on Thursday for our next random. More, I've got to think of a better name for those episodes, and we probably will eventually. But join us on Thursday for our next episode. So yeah, peace out. Take care. See ya.
Hope you enjoyed,
Have a good
guys.
day.
Take care.
Bye.